Have you ever wondered how a single, simple act can alter the course of more than one life? What if the smallest gesture of kindness from a child could rewrite the story of two families forever? This isn't just another tale about generosity. It's about how giving up what you love most can open doors you never imagined existed. Stay with me until the end, because the person who shows up at that door will be the very last one you'd expect. It was recess at Maplewood Elementary, a small school on the edge of a busy suburban neighborhood. The playground buzzed with noise, children laughing, sneakers pounding the pavement, voices overlapping in games of tag and basketball. In the middle of all this chaos, 10-year-old Ethan sat quietly on a wooden bench near the fence. He wasn't lonely. He just noticed things others ignored. That day, his eyes settled on Noah, the boy who always seemed to drift along the edges of every group. Noah didn't join in soccer matches or run around screaming like the others. Instead, he dragged a cardboard box across the cracked pavement, pushing it with both hands, his lips making soft vroom vroom noises. To him, the battered box was the fastest race car in the world. The sight stopped Ethan cold. He had dozens of toy cars at home, plastic tracks that twisted across his bedroom, even a remote-controlled truck that could climb the stairs. Yet here was Noah smiling at a cardboard box as if it were treasure. Ethan's chest tightened. He wondered what it felt like to play without real toys, to make magic out of scraps and still look so happy. That evening, Ethan walked home slowly, his backpack heavy but his thoughts heavier. He climbed the stairs to his room, dropped his books on the desk, and opened the old wooden chest at the foot of his bed. Inside were toys he hadn't touched in months, die-cast cars with chipped paint, action figures missing accessories, puzzles with corners worn soft from years of use. For a moment, he just stared at them, memories flooding back. He remembered the birthday when his dad gave him the red race car, the Christmas morning when the fire truck had been wrapped in shiny paper. These toys had been his entire world. Now, they sat abandoned. His mom, Laura, peeked into the room. "Doing some spring cleaning?" she asked with a smile. Ethan shook his head. "Not really. I was thinking of giving some toys to a kid at school. He doesn't have any. He plays with a box." Laura walked in, sat beside him, and touched his shoulder. "If what you have can make someone else happier than it makes you now, then giving isn't losing. It's passing joy forward." Ethan nodded. That night, he carefully picked through his chest. He chose toys not because they were worthless, but because they had once meant something. A red race car with a chipped bumper, a superhero figure missing a cape, a small plastic dinosaur that had been his favorite when he was 5. He placed them gently into a sturdy cardboard box, cleaned each piece with a damp cloth, and wrote, "For Noah," on the lid in careful block letters. The next morning, his hands trembled as he carried the box to school. At recess, he saw Noah again in his usual spot near the wall, flicking a bottle cap like it was a flying saucer. Ethan's steps were unsteady, but he forced himself forward. "Hey, Noah," he said softly. The boy looked up, wary. No one usually talked to him. Ethan set the box down in front of him. "I wanted you to have these. They're my toys, but I think you'll like them." For a long moment, Noah just stared. Then, almost reverently, he opened the box. His small hands brushed over the red car, the superhero, the dinosaur. His eyes widened as if he had discovered a hidden treasure chest. Clutching the race car to his chest, he whispered, "Is this really for me?" Ethan smiled. "Yeah, it's all yours." Just then, a group of kids nearby noticed. One boy laughed loudly. "Look at that! Giving away his trash to the poor kid!" Another chimed in. "Bet they don't even work anymore!" The laughter spread like wildfire. Ethan's stomach dropped. His cheeks burned. Maybe he had made a mistake. Maybe Noah would feel humiliated instead of happy. But then he saw Noah's expression. Tears brimming in his eyes, his arms wrapped around the box like it was the most precious gift in the world. "Thank you," Noah whispered, his voice trembling but full of gratitude. The other kids kept laughing, but Noah stood and walked away, hugging the box tightly. To him, it wasn't garbage. It was proof that someone had seen him, someone had cared enough to share. Ethan stood frozen, torn between the sting of humiliation and the quiet glow of doing something right. That night, Ethan lay in bed replaying the scene in his mind. He remembered the ridicule, the laughter, but also the way Noah's eyes had shone, the way he had clutched that box like life itself. Slowly, Ethan realized something important. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give away what you love most. And if this part of the story has already touched something inside you, take a moment to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Just like Ethan's box of toys, your support helps us share more stories filled with meaning and heart. The next few days at Maplewood Elementary felt strangely different for Ethan. At first, he thought no one would remember what happened. Kids made fun of each other all the time, and by the next day, there was always something new to laugh about. But this time, the teasing lingered. At lunch, two boys from his class slid their trays across the table with smirks. "Hey, got any more junk to hand out, charity boy?" one of them sneered. The other chuckled, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Ethan tried to keep his head down, focusing on his sandwich, but the words clung to him like burrs. Meanwhile, Noah carried his new box everywhere. At recess, he sat on the blacktop and lined up the cars, pushing them carefully across chalk-drawn roads he made himself. He showed off the action figure to a small group of younger kids, who listened eagerly as he gave the toy a dramatic voice. Noah seemed happier than Ethan had ever seen him, but not everyone saw it that way. "Look at him," one girl whispered as she passed by. "Acting like he won the lottery." Her friend giggled. "He basically did. With garbage." Ethan watched from a distance, torn. He had meant well, but now Noah was the center of ridicule, too. Each laugh stabbed deeper, and guilt crept in. What if he had made things worse? That night, he couldn't shake the thought. He sat at his desk, staring at the sketch Noah had given him earlier that week, a drawing of two stick figures standing beside a box full of colorful shapes, with the words, "Thank you for sharing," scrawled across the bottom. Ethan had pinned it to the corkboard above his desk, but now it felt heavy, like a reminder of the weight of choices. His mom noticed his quiet mood over dinner. "Rough day?" she asked gently. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "They all keep making fun of him. And me too. Maybe I shouldn't have given him the toys." Laura set down her fork and leaned forward. "Do you remember when you were little and we couldn't afford much after your dad left? You had toys because your aunt and uncle gave you theirs. Did you feel embarrassed?" Ethan shook his head slowly. "That's because love was inside those toys, not shame. You didn't see them as hand-me-downs. You saw them as treasures. That's how Noah feels now. Don't let other people's cruelty erase the truth of what you did." Her words sank in, but the unease didn't vanish. At school the next day, the teasing reached a peak. During recess, Ethan saw a group of older kids surround Noah near the basketball court. One of them picked up the red race car and rolled it back and forth mockingly. "This thing doesn't even roll straight," he scoffed, flicking it across the pavement. Noah scrambled after it, clutching it back to his chest. His face flushed, but he didn't cry. He just whispered, "It's mine." Ethan's chest burned. He wanted to step in, to shout, to defend his friend, but fear paralyzed him. The boys were bigger, louder, confident in their cruelty. Ethan froze, and by the time a teacher noticed and dispersed the group, the moment had passed. Noah sat quietly, hugging the car as if it were alive, while Ethan stood off to the side, feeling like a coward. That night, he couldn't sleep. His mom's words replayed in his head, but so did the laughter, the jeers. Noah's whispered, "It's mine." Ethan realized he hadn't just given toys. He had given Noah dignity, and dignity was something others were trying to rip away. The next morning, Ethan did something unusual. He woke early, rummaged through a drawer, and pulled out a small notebook his mom had given him for sketches. On the first page, he wrote a single word in big letters, empathy. He didn't know why, but the word felt important. He slipped the notebook into his backpack before heading to school. At recess, he found Noah sitting near the fence, carefully arranging the cars in a row. Ethan sat beside him without a word and pulled out the notebook. On the next page, he drew two boys side by side, one holding a box, the other holding a car. He pushed the notebook toward Noah, who looked at the drawing with wide eyes. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. He picked up a pencil and added to the picture. A house in the background, a sun overhead, and a big smile on both figures. They didn't talk much, but they didn't need to. In that moment, they understood each other. By Friday, Ethan decided to take another step. He wrote a note during class and slipped it into the school's anonymous suggestion box outside the office. "There's a boy who could use some help," it read. "He's smart, kind, and deserves more than he has. Please find a way to help him." He didn't sign his name. He just folded the paper and walked away. That afternoon, Principal Harris opened the box as usual, sifting through routine complaints about cafeteria food and playground rules. The anonymous note made her pause. She read it twice, then a third time, her lips pressing into a thoughtful line. She tucked it into her pocket and headed straight to the teacher's lounge. In class, Mrs. Rivera began her lesson by writing a word on the chalkboard: empathy. Ethan's heart skipped. He recognized it from his notebook. "Can anyone tell me what this means?" she asked. The room was quiet. She smiled gently. "It means feeling what someone else feels, even if you haven't lived it yourself. It means seeing through their eyes." As she spoke, she glanced at Ethan and Noah. Neither boy moved, but both felt a strange weight in the air, as if their secret bond had rippled outward into something larger. That weekend, Ethan's older sister, Chloe, borrowed his phone. While scrolling through the gallery, she stumbled on a video she had secretly filmed, a shaky clip of Ethan handing the box to Noah, the boy hugging it tightly, and the laughter of kids in the background. She edited it quickly, added soft piano music, and posted it online with the caption, "My little brother did something beautiful today." Ethan didn't even know until Monday morning, when whispers filled the hallways. "That's the kid from the video. He's the one who gave away the toys." Some looked at him differently now, not with mockery, but with something else. Curiosity, admiration maybe. When he finally saw the video, Ethan's stomach flipped. Watching himself on screen, seeing Noah's face light up, made his chest ache. But then came the comments. Thousands of them. People from across the country wrote about how the video reminded them of their childhoods, how kindness still existed, how children could teach adults what really mattered. That afternoon, while Ethan was still trying to process everything, there was a knock on his front door. His mom answered, surprised to see an older man in a worn suit holding a leather folder. His hair was streaked with gray, his eyes tired but intent. "Good evening," the man said softly. "I'm looking for a boy named Noah. I saw a video online, and I think he might be my grandson." Laura froze. Ethan, standing just behind her, felt his breath catch. The man's voice wavered. "I haven't seen him since he was born, but that video, it brought me back. I need to set things right." And with that, the story that began with a cardboard box was about to open a door no one saw coming. When the man at the door introduced himself, Laura instinctively tightened her grip on Ethan's shoulder. She didn't know if he was dangerous or if this was some elaborate misunderstanding. The man, however, didn't carry the posture of someone seeking trouble. His voice was steady but fragile, like glass about to crack. "My name is Richard," he said quietly. "I'm Noah's grandfather. I walked away from my own son years ago, and because of that I lost the chance to know my grandson. But when I saw that video of the boy giving away toys and the way Noah held them like the most precious things in the world, I realized I couldn't stay away any longer." Laura glanced at Ethan. The boy's eyes were wide, his breath caught somewhere between excitement and fear. Richard noticed and offered a faint smile. "I'm sorry if I'm intruding, but I think Noah deserves to know me, if his mother allows it." Later that evening, Noah and his mother, Grace, arrived at Ethan's house. Grace was wary at first, her brows drawn, her voice low and cautious. "You say you're his grandfather? Where were you when we needed you? Where were you when I begged your son for support, and he vanished?" Richard lowered his gaze, shame carving deep lines into his face. "I was too proud, too stubborn, and I let that pride cost me a family. But I can't undo the past. I can only ask for the chance to do better now." Noah stood slightly behind his mother, clutching the red race car close. His eyes darted between Grace and Richard, searching for a clue. He had never met this man before, but something in Richard's trembling voice felt different from all the careless adults who had let him down before. Ethan, watching from the doorway, felt the air thicken with unspoken questions. He wanted to say something, anything, but this wasn't his moment. He had started the chain of events, but now he was just a witness. Grace's lips trembled, as though she wanted to say no, to shut the door on a man who had been absent for too long. But she saw Noah's eyes, curious, uncertain, hungry for connection. She exhaled sharply. "We'll talk, but slowly, and you'll have to earn it." Richard nodded quickly, relief flooding his face. "I'll take any chance you give me." The first meeting was quiet, almost awkward. Richard sat at the kitchen table, his large hands folded nervously, while Noah perched on the edge of his chair across from him. For long minutes, silence ruled, until Richard reached into his folder and pulled out a photo. It was a faded picture of a younger Richard with his son, Noah's father, when they were both smiling after a baseball game. He slid it across the table. "That's your dad when he was your age," Richard said softly. "He loved baseball more than anything, and I wasn't the father he needed. That's why he left, and why I never knew you. But I don't want to make the same mistake with you." Noah studied the photo carefully, his little fingers brushing over the edges. He didn't say much, but the way he held the picture showed it meant more to him than words could capture. Grace watched silently, torn between anger and gratitude. She had carried so much alone, had built a life for Noah with scraps of strength, and now this man appeared, asking for space in their lives. But even she couldn't deny the look in her son's eyes, the look of someone who had been given a missing piece of his story. Ethan and Laura excused themselves to give the family privacy. Upstairs, Ethan paced in his room, restless. "Do you think it's good for Noah?" he asked his mom. Laura sat on his bed, her voice calm. "Sometimes, what seems complicated for adults is simple for children. Noah deserves the chance to choose for himself. And maybe this is bigger than us, Ethan. Sometimes kindness spreads in ways we can't predict." The following week, Richard began visiting more often. At first, he kept his distance, sitting quietly on the porch while Noah played with his toys nearby. Then, slowly, small conversations began. Richard brought books, old baseball cards, even a handmade wooden toy he had carved years ago but never given to anyone. One Saturday, he surprised Noah with a brand new baseball glove. The boy's eyes widened, unsure if he was allowed to accept. Grace hesitated, then nodded. Noah slipped his hand inside the glove and smiled for the first time that day. "Want to play catch?" Richard asked, his voice hopeful. They went to the park, and for hours, the sound of the ball slapping leather filled the air. Noah's laughter echoed across the field, unguarded and pure. Grace watched from the bench, tears glistening in her eyes. Ethan sat beside her, clutching a juice box, trying to process how a box of old toys had somehow led to this. But not everyone approved. At school, the teasing didn't vanish overnight. Some kids still mocked Noah for carrying around his trash toys, though the laughter had dulled since the video spread online. Ethan tried to shield him, but there were moments when the cruelty slipped through. One afternoon, a boy shoved the race car from Noah's hands, letting it skid across the pavement until it cracked. Noah froze. For a moment, Ethan thought he would break down, but instead, Noah picked up the broken toy carefully, cradling it as if it were still whole. "It's still mine," he whispered. Richard, who had come to pick him up that day, saw the scene from the car. He stepped out, his jaw tight. Instead of shouting, Richard knelt beside Noah. "You know," he said softly, "things break, people too. But that doesn't make them worthless. Sometimes the cracks are proof of how much they've been loved." He pulled out a roll of tape from his pocket. It was clear he had come prepared for something like this. Together, they fixed the little car, sealing its cracks. Noah smiled faintly, holding it close again. Ethan realized then that Richard wasn't just trying to make up for lost time. He was trying to teach Noah something only experience could teach, that broken things could still carry meaning, and broken people could still be whole. By the time spring rolled in, the transformation was undeniable. Noah walked taller, his laughter was freer, and the shadows in his eyes seemed lighter. He still carried the box of toys, though now it was joined by the baseball glove and a photo of his dad that Richard had given him. One evening, Grace sat at Laura's kitchen table with a cup of tea. Her voice was weary but softer. "I never thought I'd forgive him, and maybe I still haven't, but I can't deny what he's done for Noah. My boy has a light I haven't seen in years." Laura nodded. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about giving tomorrow a chance to be better than yesterday. Meanwhile, Ethan and Noah's friendship deepened. They spent afternoons drawing together, building imaginary cities out of cardboard, and inventing new stories for the action figures. Their bond wasn't about pity or charity anymore. It was about trust. Still, Ethan couldn't shake one thought. This wasn't the end of the story. The box of toys had sparked something, but the ripple kept spreading. And soon the whole community would feel it. Weeks passed, and the small box of toys continued to ripple outward in ways Ethan never could have imagined. What had started as a private gesture between two children was now being talked about by teachers, parents, even neighbors who had never once cared about schoolyard kindness. It began when the principal called an assembly. She stood at the podium, her voice echoing across the gymnasium. "Sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from textbooks," she began. "They come from the smallest acts of generosity. One of our students reminded us of that recently." Her eyes landed briefly on Ethan, though she didn't say his name aloud. "From today forward, we will begin a program called Sharing Hands, where students can bring what they no longer use, books, toys, clothes, and pass them on to others. No one should feel invisible here." The announcement was met with applause. Some kids clapped politely, others genuinely. For Noah, sitting in the third row clutching his repaired race car, it felt like the world had shifted. For Ethan, it was strange to sit there and realize he had been the pebble that started this wave. The following week, donation boxes appeared around the school, decorated with drawings and slogans written by students. At first, the contributions were modest. A couple of stuffed animals, some gently used sneakers, a handful of books. But soon the boxes filled to the brim. Parents caught on, bringing bags of items from home. Even teachers contributed, cleaning out closets to give coats and jackets. Noah was no longer the boy mocked for holding on to scraps. He became the face of something bigger, though he never sought attention. He still carried his old box proudly, but now it was joined by other children carrying theirs. The playground looked different. Circles of kids exchanging books, swapping action figures, trading stories about where each item came from. Richard watched this transformation with awe. For so many years, he had lived with the regret of a broken family, convinced that some mistakes couldn't be undone. Yet here he was, sitting on the bleachers during recess, watching his grandson laugh with friends he had never dared to hope for. Sometimes he felt like an intruder in this new chapter, but Noah's occasional glance back, smiling, waving, told him he was welcome. One Saturday, the school held its first official empathy fair. Tables were lined up in the gym, covered with donated items sorted neatly. Toys, books, clothing, even homemade baked goods. Parents milled around, teachers supervised, and students guided visitors with enthusiasm. A banner stretched across the wall, the box that started it all. Grace stood beside Noah, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. She was proud, but still cautious. Forgiveness was a slow process for her, especially when it came to Richard. Yet even she couldn't deny what the old man had done. He had shown up, not just with gifts, but with time, with presence, with a humility she never thought she'd see. Ethan, meanwhile, wandered through the fair with wide eyes. Everywhere he looked, he saw children smiling, families laughing, people connecting. It felt surreal to think that his decision to carry an old box of toys to school had led to this. At one point, he passed a table where a little girl clutched a worn teddy bear to her chest, whispering to her mother, "It's the best toy I ever had." Ethan's throat tightened. He turned away quickly, blinking fast. Later that afternoon, the principal asked Ethan and Noah to stand on stage together. Ethan hated the spotlight, but when Noah grabbed his hand, he felt a surge of courage. The principal handed them a microphone. "Do either of you want to say something?" she asked. Noah, usually shy, surprised everyone by stepping forward. His voice shook at first, but grew steadier with each word. "When I got the box, it wasn't just toys. It was proof that someone saw me, that I mattered. And because of that, I got something even bigger. I got a friend. And I got my grandfather." His eyes flicked toward Richard in the audience, who wiped his cheeks quickly. The gym erupted in applause. Ethan, red-faced, spoke only one sentence. "Sometimes sharing is how we remind people they're not alone." His voice was quiet, but the silence that followed was loud. From then on, the program didn't fade away like most school projects. It grew. Local newspapers covered the story, dubbing it the Toy Box Movement. Churches, community centers, and even nearby schools began their own versions. Soon, the simple act of sharing was inspiring people far beyond their small town. For Ethan, life didn't suddenly become perfect. Kids still teased sometimes, homework was still exhausting, and he still felt small in a big world. But now he carried a secret strength, the knowledge that even the smallest person could make a difference. For Noah, the change was even deeper. He was no longer defined by loneliness or poverty. He had a grandfather who showed up at baseball practice, a friend who believed in him, and a school that treated him with respect. His box of toys, though battered, had become a symbol of everything new in his life. As for Richard, he found redemption not in grand gestures, but in the quiet ones. Sitting through school plays, clapping at Little League games, listening to Noah talk about his day. Every small moment was a stitch, repairing a family torn apart by pride. One evening, months later, Ethan and Noah sat together in the backyard, watching fireflies blink in the twilight. The toy box sat between them, half empty, half full, depending on how you looked at it. "Do you ever think about how all this started?" Noah asked. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, with a bunch of old toys I didn't even play with anymore." Noah smiled, his eyes glinting in the fading light. "Funny how something small can change everything." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of their journey resting lightly between them. The world was still imperfect, still unfair at times, but they had learned something powerful. Kindness didn't need to be grand to be life-changing. That night, before bed, Ethan looked at the empty spot in his room where the toy box had once been. He didn't feel loss anymore. He felt full, because he finally understood. When you give away pieces of your heart, somehow it comes back to you multiplied. And if you've stayed with me until now, maybe this story touched something inside you too. So here's my invitation. Let's keep this chain of kindness alive. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who needs to remember that even the smallest act of generosity can spark miracles. Because just like Ethan's box, what you give away might change more lives than you ever imagined.